Good morning, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Tech Leaders Unplugged. And I am joined today by my fellow teammate, Bill Bannerus from Logic Gear. Thank you, Bill, for graciously co-hosting today's conversation.
Yeah, glad to be here, Carlos. Thank you.
Yes, thank you so much, Bill. And of course, we have our guest, Lindsey Simon, the VP of Engineering at Vercel. So, Lindsey, thank you for joining us today.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. It'll be a blast, I'm sure. So, okay, first of all, let's get started with you, Lindsey. First of all, tell us and the audience a little bit about you. I mean, where you're coming from, your background, anything you want to say about yourself, and then tell us about Vercel then, and then we'll move on to the topic. Thank you.
All right. Yeah, great. So my background, I got into programming for a couple of different reasons 25 years ago. But one of the things that happened, my first real job was as a webmaster. I worked, and I don't think that's a job title that really exists anymore. But at the time, it felt pretty D&D cool to me. And I ran the DNS servers, the mail servers, the web servers for a newspaper, a weekly newspaper called the Austin Chronicle. And it was, it's largely an arts and entertainment magazine. And I felt like my job was to provide a platform for writers and for creatives to, share their insights and share things about other artists and creators with the world and politics, news, etc. It was wonderful. It was really coming from the point of view of being embedded in the community, and the web was pretty nascent at this point. We were wondering if the web would ever be a thing that anyone ever made money on at this time. So that just kind of grounds the time and place, I think. But, the way I kind of cut my teeth was by starting to experiment with Apache and Mod Perl. And then ultimately PHP. It was this huge revolution of being able to make dynamic real-time web applications. And so, the practical value there was, okay, a writer wants to correct a story. In a newspaper, you have to wait till the next week and then issue corrections. And on the web, we could just change it right now. And, using PHP, read from the database, and it was just live. We would generate pages. We had static content generation, even at that time. And it was very powerful. So that really set up the stage of then ultimately I went to go work at startups and got to Google about 15 years ago and started working on a tool there called App Engine. And App Engine was very similar in its time and place, and still is, to the mission of Vercel. So this is kind of a long-term dot connector, but App Engine's purpose was, we're going to give you a framework, and at that time, C, Java, and Python, and you can build an application on your machine with any resources you want to. You can debug it, you can reason about it, and then you type a command in your terminal, magic happens. In this case, it was like an rsync up to a server, and then you get a URL hosted on Google infrastructure, best-in-class CDN, best-in-class routing. It was a very comprehensive set of tools. And I think that was both its benefit and its reasons for some of its demise. It was kind of a locked-in infrastructure. And then you fast forward almost 10 years, and I had become pretty enamored with Next.js and what Next.js was trying to do, because I saw the opportunity to build into a framework all the things I tried to do in a build system to optimize websites. And it was just like baked into Next.js. So I started experimenting and playing with Next.js really early on and became a customer of the platform at that time called Zeit. And, a year later, I was working as the VP of engineering at Quip, owned by Salesforce, working on mostly, infrastructure and, really large customer needs, enterprise needs there. But I kept a side project going, and I kept it on Vercel. And I had this incredible customer success experience from someone who's very technical on that team. And, I pushed a ticket in and said, all right, I can't figure out why my build isn't working. I've been paying forever. I know I don't technically get support, but maybe you can help me out. And one of the CS people started pushing changes to a branch up to my public repository on GitHub, which would trigger a build. and then they would push another one, a change, and that would trigger another build. And I thought this was the most incredible technical support experience I'd ever seen in my career. I wrote into jobs at Zeit.co, and I wrote something like, hey, here's my background. I don't know if what your plans are as a company, but I want to work there. Fast forward, I start working at Vercel. I got a job in product initially. Guillermo told me, I just sight unseen wanted to work here. And Guillermo told me 2 weeks before I'd start that he wanted me to work on product. And I got chills up my arms because I've never been a product manager before, and said, oh yeah, great. That sounds amazing. And, got off the call, freaked out, and started figuring out what I'd do next. So I started talking to customers right away when I joined the company and getting to know people. But talking to customers was, I think, the thing that really underlies all of what's made Vercel and Next.js successful over this time. It is a true dedication to helping people succeed on the web with a combination of open source and services and infrastructure.
Yeah, picking up on that, that's a real key point, Lindsey. And I know on the delivery side where I work, listening to customers' needs and the issues and challenges that they face and addressing those is key. And I can see how excited you are about the firsthand experiences. And you mentioned a couple use cases there where problems were festering and solutions were found, and the excitement that you found in a key solution that really drove to improved efficiency and productivity for that development team. So could you talk a little bit about, I know in the software industry that we're in, all the way from business influencers, decision makers, all the way down to product managers, project managers, even scrum masters, everybody's looking to really increase efficiency, productivity, while still providing creativity for development teams and individual developers. Could you share a little bit how the solutions that you and your team provide really help the next generation of improvement in efficiency and increased not stifling creativity, right? Taking things to the next level.
Yeah, that is I think that's the thing that connects most of what Vercel is trying to accomplish. Yeah. We have an internal metric which we call our confetti metric. It's the time to happiness. Basically, it's the delta between you landing code and us giving you a URL. And we try very hard to focus on that performance. But that performance is part of the premise that there are a set of tools, there are a set of capabilities, and some norms around what it means to develop successfully for the web, which we have sort of collectively now started calling the front-end cloud. And this is kind of a segment off, okay, get compute and things into the cloud. It really started with get VMs, get machines into the cloud. And now it's do something like a cloud development lifestyle, right? Like try to take advantage of the performance you can get on the network to build better together. And that is what, it's a focus on accessibility, design, speed, usability. These are all things your developers want to be able to do, and to get the recipe of things together so that you can successfully and consistently deliver an amazing user experience. Those are the tools that we've bundled into the terminology of front-end cloud. I think a lot of Vercel a lot of people who work here come from a background of working with either agencies or doing work for friends and family. And this is where it all kind of comes together into the business, right? The business ROI is you don't need to spend an arm and a leg on custom bespoke infrastructure, which takes time, money, and a lot of different kinds of resources to do something that really large companies have figured out in some ways. And this has been codified, and we're giving this now to hobby developers and small businesses and large enterprises.
Okay, that was kind of my next area I was going to go into. What are the different types of of companies that come? Is it, large enterprise businesses, small tech startups, blockchain, Web3? Because I know we see in our enterprise customers, even some that are looking to again try to retool, where they may have tried to make the shift from large client server based legacy suites of apps to cloud hosted, quote unquote, putting a web interface, or trying to even migrate some of their key apps to SaaS, and trying to pivot to software as a service versus just releasing large legacy enterprise applications. So what do you see a broad spectrum of companies coming to the table, and what are the type of challenges that they face specifically? Are they're the same types of challenges between large enterprise, small tech startups, hobby developers, like you say? Is it similar, or are there a lot of differences?
I think there are a collection of similarities, and then of course there are differences, right? If you're a hobby developer or a really small business, you get to start. You have your green field. You get to pick the latest and greatest tech stack of today, and go from there. And if you're coming in and you've been in business for 10 years, or you're a large agency, right? You have customers on all different kinds of tech stacks. For people starting from scratch, I mean, there's a very healthy flow of people who start for free on Vercel, decide to build a startup or something like that, and then that business gets traction. And that kind of comes back to the idea that Vercel is designed to make it really easy for you to push up a high-performing, globally distributed website and business from day one. You don't have to go refactor and productionize. If you adopt this kind of stack today, you're there. And where enterprises come in is very much from the point of view that's been the term digital transformation has been going on. This is a while now, and I think this comes back to a couple of really key things for enterprises. They have a developer team who knows what the latest and greatest is, because it's very important for developers to stay on top of trends like this. And then they come to work, and they're working in a system where CI/CD is weekly. There's a build cop rotation. They're just disappointed with that, and so engineering leaders both want to change for that reason, and they want to iterate faster. All evidence points to being able to iterate faster is the key ingredient to success.
Right.
And so so that means enterprises come to us and they often say, hey, we want to get there. We have one part of our site, maybe it's their docs, maybe it's their app, maybe it's some set of marketing sites, and they want to start making this transition. So Next.js's design, and I think this was one of Guillermo's very early positions for Next, was that you could do this on a page by page basis. You could iterate, and it wouldn't be like, oh, you need a gigantic JS bundle for this page now, or the same thing you had on other pages. This could be lightweight, allowing you to say, okay, move part of your site over easily. That's a big deal, because then you've got this beautiful internal competition, right? You get a team who goes, hey, look how much happier or better we can do on this new setup. And they really validate it. We don't have to prove it to them, or, we can tell them it's better. But, if you can start, there's a comment around build previews. Yeah. If you can start to iterate more quickly, that is everything, right? That time to live is the endorphin rush for a software developer. If there's nothing worse than leaving a bug online for a week that your friends or customers are hitting, because you have to wait to push a build till it passes a million QA steps and et cetera. So that internal competition leads teams to start to push towards the transformation of their tech stacks and their tools.
Yeah, that's a great point. I know I was reading on your website where you guys provide the in your framework, in your platform, the functionality to really have that preview prototype of before you merge your code into the master. Could you talk a little bit more about how that improved efficiency do you guys track any kind of metrics or KPIs that really show, the improvement in efficiency and finding bugs sooner in the software development lifecycle or the path to production pipeline?
Yeah, I mean, the easiest example of this is in the code review process. The prior state of the art was I send you a branch and a PR, and you, to test it, now need to pull down that branch and PR, stop whatever you're doing, go pull that branch and PR down, and start testing on your local machine. And the number of various things that can go wrong when you do that is many. Like usually, and so what happens is people skip that step, right? Then you just look at the code and try to think, okay, does it work? Does it look like it works? I don't think that's very effective. Instead, you get a pull request and a link that you can immediately go to and test in real time whether something works and have a actually very reasoned conversation. One of the reasons I came to Vercel was to build out a feature that we've now had for 7 months, 8 months, called preview comments. And the idea is on these previews, which are generated automatically from branches, right? On these previews, you can go and leave comments and say, hey, this looks weird on my machine. And in the past, right, if you knew how, you'd take a screenshot and send an email, and then you'd have to follow up with, well, what browser were you on? What did an infinity of questions that all get back to, oh, you were on the wrong URL. And if you go to a stable URL, like a branch name, and you're always seeing the latest and greatest, and you leave a comment directly there, we capture all that metadata. And now you have a real-time, bi-directional syncing conversation that can post back into Slack or other tools you use. And it just changes the feedback loop. It speeds it up so dramatically. And so that both empowers engineer to engineer collaboration, but it also opens up collaboration to people in product, customers, right? Like if you're an agency, that part of the process can be so painful, and you can make it so much better. And other personas who are previously sort of unempowered to engage in the development process, like maybe they don't have a GitHub account if you're a marketing exec, right? But you surely want to review the thing that's going to go live tomorrow. You can both leave meaningful input where it matters and see the velocity of it being dealt with in code by your team. And that gives you trust and confidence in your team and in the platform itself. So it's very powerful.
Yeah, that's pretty awesome. I think I read in your site how you guys have integrated Slack into that collaboration loop, right? And I guess that allows other non-tech technical people to get involved in the dialogue. It sounds like it's almost like a pre-identification of defects. And do you see in project teams that you can see a marked reduction in defects?
Yeah, certainly. I mean, I think the thing is you actually act on them. We all see the defects. It's when do we see them and how quickly do they get acted on? And I think we're pushing for see them first before they're live in front of your customers, and the ability to act on them much more quickly. If you tighten that feedback loop, you're certainly going to make it easier to ship better products.
Yeah, absolutely. In that preview, can you run your unit tests or integration tests
certainly.
Along with,
Yeah. A lot of people run a whole host of, those previews are effectively, because it's a branch, depending on how you cut staging or production or various stages of staging, using branches for that works pretty well. You can set up different kinds of environments on Vercel for your environment variables to be able to, hit different data sources for different kinds of branches or stages in your development lifecycle. And it also doesn't enforce one way of doing work. Companies have established or not, or they haven't established, but a lot of them have established workflows that they want, they're not ready to change that, but they do want to change the tools. And eventually it turns out they change their processes along the way. And so we need to stay flexible with that.
Okay. Yeah, that's awesome. I think you mentioned performance, and I was going to ask you about, kind of edge computing and, regional deployment and the impact in that same kind of prototyping preview environment. Can you switch where your data's come from, or switch where your URL is being hosted so you can test kind of regional performance for different clients, regional
Absolutely.
clients.
Well, I mean, one of the beauties of the Vercel platform is that fundamentally, we host your content globally, and then you might have, you may have compute in different regions, right, to get close to your database, and you can determine where you send that compute, and ideally you want to optimize putting your compute as close as possible to your data stores. So that's totally configurable and configurable via environment variables in your previews. So if you want to test different regions, that's completely doable.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yep. And that enables your tools as well. Like if you have a tool that hits URLs in different regions and tests for Chrome Web Vitals, for example, you can validate that this is working. Or
That's
tune
awesome.
and adjust. And we report on that. We give you built-in analytics that tell you what your Chrome Web Vitals are in different regions, on different machines, and from your users. This is another principle around web performance and testing that I've been enamored with for, since my time at Google on the web performance team. Being able to validate, from real users what their performance is like. I've spent a lot of time in my life trying to give people tools to do that, because that's how you make them better.
Yeah, absolutely. So your platform also provides the analytics real time in production environments and feeds that back. And something like a product like New Relic might do.
Yeah, we have a really interesting advantage over third-party analytics, though, because we are your service provider. When if you load a script tag for New Relic or any third-party analytics tool, immediately now you've impacted the loading process in the browser to okay, go fetch on a async or not, hopefully async, but to go fetch this bundle of JavaScript now and then start sending analytics to this other server. Well, okay, now you've got third-party sub-processor right there, and you also have ad blockers, right? Like you're losing intelligence right away, some percentage, and a lot of platforms, this is a good thing. But if you're trying to make your product better, you actually need reliable analytics. And because we're your service provider, we ship an endpoint in your domain. So if you are, Vercel.com, we ship an endpoint _magic string, and that's where your analytics go. They go into first-party ingestion pipeline that then we give you analytics, a view of your analytics on. So you don't lose data in that process. And, we make sure you don't send, things you shouldn't in that as well. But you can send custom events, and we gather telemetry there that's reliable.
Wow. Yeah, that sounds really powerful. And if you were going to leave one thing for our audience and for potential customers, one thing that is really a key component to improving efficiency and performance of front end web development overall, what would that be?
Look at your data. I mean, this has always been the case, but we measure ourselves by our ability to deliver time to first byte for you as a customer of Vercel. And we look at that data as a measure of whether we're succeeding or not. And there's a lot of ways that we or you could harm that user experience. But in the end of the day, users are not here for the tools you choose. They're here for the outcomes. Our goal is to make it so that when users see URLs, they don't cringe before they tap that URL, right? Like you've been on clunky websites where you're going to just wait for it to load, and it's painful. And we're trying to deliver a different web, and we want to bring everyone along with us.
Well, thanks. That's an awesome goal, and it's a really intelligent and well thought out and well experienced input for the community, I think. Anything for a particular customer that might be, still shifting to the cloud? They may be in still a hybrid mode where they're also looking at just the cost of hosting on the web, AWS or Azure, and they're really looking at cost reduction in those areas. How can they streamline? How can they be more efficient?
Yep. Yeah, I mean, that's the premise of why, again, the thing that we believe makes Vercel unique. The primitives for hosting or serving traffic, if you've ever spent time in the AWS console, it's extremely powerful, and there's a lot of sharp edges. You can a lot of power comes great responsibility. And it isn't, I don't think most people pushing websites and wanting to create and develop really want the added risk or the added DevOps costs associated with running infrastructure. And we see that. That's why people come to Vercel. When you look at the total cost of ownership for both the service being provided, down to something like bandwidth, right? But if you look at, okay, right, bandwidth plus, I have to employ, DevOps engineers with experience in K8s. I need SREs. It all comes back to there's a better way, and we are that team for you.
Awesome. Well, it's been very enlightening speaking with you and listening to your insights, Lindsey, and sure appreciate your time here with us. And I think we're coming to the top of the hour here, right?
Yes,
Carlos?
yes, we're coming up on time, unfortunately. I mean, this was definitely very enlightening for those of us who, like me, are more at the layman's level with technology. But I want to thank you for having been with us today. I just have a quick announcement to make really quick. And this is about the next week's show. We're going to be, on the 14th, because we're going to have a 1 week break from the shows. We're going to be continuing on the 14th, which is a Monday. We're going to be speaking to Siddharth Shah. I hope I pronounced that correctly. The Vice President of Engineering at Canoe, and the topic is going to be software-defined transportation, revolutionizing the road through software definition. So stay tuned, folks, for another episode on the 14th of Tech Leaders Unplugged, right here at 9:30 Pacific. And join us here, and stay tuned for more great upcoming shows on our website, techleadersunplugged.com. Thank you so much. Thank you, Lindsey. Thank you, Bill, and see you next time.